In this section, we will learn about working with strings in Python. First, we will learn about the different ways that we can create strings using single, double, and triple quotes, and the differences between each of these. Then we will learn about the concepts of indexing and slicing strings. After that, we will look at the different methods that Python gives us to work with strings. Then we will learn what string concatenation is, and how to concatenate strings in Python. After that, we will have a hands-on coding exercise where you can apply the skills you learned in this section hands-on. Finally, we will look at a recap of what we learned in this section of the course. In the next lecture, we will learn about creating strings using single, double, and triple quotes. In this lecture, we will learn about creating strings in Python with single, double, and triple quotes. In other programming languages, strings usually go inside of double quotes, and characters go inside of single quotes. However, Python supports working with strings using single, double, or triple quotes. For example, if we wanted to have a variable that stored the string ABC, we could use any of those three types of quotes. Really, there is a fourth way to do this by using the double quotes 3 times. In other words, a triple quoted string could consist of 3 single quotes or 3 double quotes. We can also use triple quoted strings to work as multi-line comments, blocks of text that the computer will ignore when running the program. Even though Python doesn't officially support multi-line comments, this is the way that developers achieve the same effect. In the next lecture, we will learn about what a substring is. In this lecture, we will learn what a substring is. One really important concept when working with strings in computer programming is that of substrings. A substring is a string inside of another string. For example, let's say we have the string ABC. What are all of the different substrings inside of this string? A, B, C, AB, BC, and ABC. Yes, that's right. Every string is a substring of itself. In the coming lectures, the idea of substrings is going to be important, so I wanted to use this video to define the term substring and show you the example we just looked at. In the next lecture, we will learn about indexing and slicing with strings. In this lecture, we will learn about indexing and slicing strings. When we learned about lists, we learned that we could use their index in order to reference elements at a particular position in the list. In a similar way, we can reference any character in a string using indexing. For example, let's start out with a variable named text set equal to the string hello world. Then we will print out the result of text at index 0. Notice we use the same technique as we do when referencing list elements, using square brackets and passing in the index. When we run the code, you will notice that h was printed, which is correct since h is the element at index 0. Negative indexing is also valid when working with strings. For example, we can pass in -1 and then run the code. As you can see, D was printed to the console. There is also a concept called slicing, which means grabbing a sequence of values from a string using indexing. We learned about this concept when working with lists as well. Remember the syntax with the square brackets that has an index, colon, and another index? That is how we sliced a list into a sublist. Similarly, we can use this same technique to retrieve a substring from a string. For example, let's say we wanted to grab the substring hello from the string hello world. We would type text, then square brackets, and specify 0, the starting index, a colon, and then 6, one more than the ending index. Remember, with slicing the second number is up to, but not including, so this will give us the elements at indexes 0 through 5. When we run the code, you will notice that hello was printed to the console. That is a look at how we can use the concepts of indexing and slicing when working with strings. In the next lecture, we will learn about the string functions that Python gives us access to. In this lecture, we will learn about the string functions that Python gives us access to. To start out, let's create a variable named example and set it equal to the string value ABC. We can use the starts with function to check if a string starts with a certain substring. For example, we will use an if statement and check if our string example starts with A. If that is the case, we will output string starts with A to the console. When we run the code, you will notice that the statement was output since our example string ABC starts with the letter A. Similar to the starts with function, Python also gives us the ends with function to check if a string ends with a particular substring. For example, let's use an if statement and check if example ends with the letter C. If that is the case, we will print string ends with C to the console. When we run the code, you will notice that the statement was output since our example string ABC does end with C. Python's upper function allows us to convert all of the letters in a string to uppercase. For example, we could print out example.upper. When we run the code, you will notice that our string that was ABC in all lowercase is now ABC in all uppercase. For the next example, we are going to change our string from ABC to the string hello world using all uppercase letters. Just like Python has an upper function that converts all of the letters in a string to uppercase, it also has a lower function that converts all of the letters in a string to lowercase. We will print out the result of example.lower. When we run the code, you will notice that hello world was printed to the console in all lowercase letters. For the next example, we will assign our string variable the value ABC. The capitalize function will capitalize the first letter in a string. For example, we can print out the result of a call to example.capitalize. When we run the code, you will notice that the A, the first letter in our string, was capitalized. Next, we will assign our example variable the string hello world with all lowercase letters. Python's title function will capitalize the first letter of each word. For example, we can print out the result of example.title. When we run the code, you will notice that the string was modified. As you can see, the H in hello and the W in world were capitalized. If you have programmed in other languages, you are probably somewhat familiar with what string formatting is. It is when you can substitute in variable values into a string using a format function, and usually using curly braces. Python also has a string format function. Let's look at an example of it. First, we will create a variable named price and set it equal to 10. Next, we are going to create a variable named text and set it equal to the string the item costs. Then we will have a pair of curly braces, and then the word dollars. The curly braces will be replaced with the actual item cost when the format function is used. Then we will print text.format and pass in price. When we run the code, you will notice that the output, the item costs $10, was printed to the console. For the next example, we will have a variable named text, set equal to happy birthday, with an exclamation mark at the end. Python's replace function allows us to replace one substring with another in a given string. Let's say we want to replace the exclamation mark at the end with an S, so that our text reads happy birthdays instead of happy birthday. We will print out the result of text.replace and pass exclamation mark in as the first argument and S as the second argument. When we run the code, you will notice that the exclamation mark was replaced by a lowercase s, just like we specified. The next example is going to be for Python's join function. To start off, we're going to create a variable named example and set it equal to a list with the string values A, B, and C. Next, we will have a variable named x and set it equal to the string dash and then call the join function on it. Into the function, we will pass an example as the argument to the join function. Join will take each element in the list and join them into one string, separated by the string we specify, which in this case is the dash or hyphen symbol. Finally, we will use Python's print function to output the value of x to the console. When we run the code, you will notice that one string was printed, A-B-C. For this next example, we are going to have a string variable set to a value of AA, BB, CC. Python's count function will count the number of times that a substring occurs in a string and return us that value. We will use the print function to print the result of example.countA. When we run the code, you will notice that 2 was printed to the console. The next example that we will look at will have a variable named text set equal to the string greetings from planet Earth. The find function will return us the index for the first occurrence of the substring we are searching for. For example, we can print the result of text.find and pass in the string e. When we run the code, you will notice that 2 was printed. Since indexing starts at 0, G is at index 0, R is at index 1, and E is at index 2. For the next example, we will set our text variable to the uppercase string ABC. The isUpper function will return true if every letter in a string is uppercase, and false otherwise. We will print the value of text.isUpper to the console. When we run the code, you will notice that true was printed since A, B, and C are all uppercase in our string. Just like the isUpper function, Python also has an isLower function that will check if each letter in the string is lowercase. We will first change the string to ABC in all lowercase letters. Then we will use Python's print function to print out the result of text.isLower to the console. When we run the code, you will notice that true was printed, since the letters A, B, and C in our string are all lowercase. For the next example, our text string is going to consist of a space. We can use the isSpace function to check if our string only contains white space. The isSpace function will return true if the string contains all white space, and false otherwise. We will use Python's print function to output the result of text.isSpace to the console. When we run the code, you will notice that true was printed to the console. Next, we are going to want our string to contain all numbers. For example, 1, 2, 3. Then we will use Python's print function and pass in the result of called a text.isNumeric. The isNumeric function will return true if any of the text within the string is a number. When we run the code, you will notice that true was printed, since the string does contain digits. Similarly, Python gives us access to the isDigit function. If we use the isDigit function and then run the code, you will notice that true was printed. One question you may have is what is the difference between Python's isNumeric and isDigit functions? IsNumeric will return true if there are any numbers 0 through 9 in the string. IsDigit will only return true if every character in the string is a digit 0 through 9. Python also gives us the isTitle function to check for whether or not a string matches the criteria for a title. Recall from earlier in the lecture that a title means the first letter of each word is capitalized in a string. For this example, we will change our text variable to be hello world with a capital H and a capital W. Then we will print text.isTitle to the console. When we run the code, you will notice that true was printed since the string fits the criteria for a title. In the next lecture, we will learn about string concatenation. In this lecture, we will learn about string concatenation. In Python, the plus operator allows us to add numbers together. However, in both Python and most other programming languages, the plus operator also allows us to add strings together. I know what you were thinking. This instructor has lost his mind and is crazy. How can we add words together in a computer program? The answer is by a process known as string concatenation. Up until this point in the course, when writing hello world programs, we have done so using the print statement and passing in one string, the string hello world. But we can also write such a program using string concatenation. For example, we can use Python's print function and then pass in hello plus an empty space plus world. Each time we use the plus operator, we are concatenating or joining one string to another string. Let's look at a more practical, real-world example of string concatenation. Let's write a function named hello that prints out a name. My name is Rob, so I'm going to print out hello Rob. We will start out using the def keyword and naming our function hello. Then inside of this function, we will use Python's print function and log hello Rob to the console. Then we will call the hello function. When we run the code, you will notice that hello Rob was printed to the console. There is one problem with our program. Did you notice it? What if we wanted to greet another person that has a different name than Rob? What do we do then? We don't want to have to change the code passed into the print function each time that we do this. In fact, by using string concatenation, we can have the person's name be supplied when the function is called. To do this, we first need to add a parameter to our function, which we will call name. Then, inside of the print function, we will have the string hello concatenated to a string with an empty space, and then concatenated to the name passed into the function. Finally, when we call the hello function, we will pass in the name of the person that we want to greet. In this example, I will pass in John. When we run the code, you will notice that hello John was printed to the console. We can add a few more calls to our hello function and pass in different names. When we run the code, notice that each time we called the function with a different name, the appropriate greeting to that person was printed out. This is a look at the power of string concatenation in Python. In this lecture, we will go over the answer to the coding exercise. For this coding exercise, we start out with the string s set equal to the value hello world. I even started you off with the print statement, the s, and the square brackets. We are asked to use slicing to print out the substring hello from the string hello world. The whole test here is to see if you know what to put inside of the brackets. Recall that slicing is when we use the square brackets and supply the start and end indexes for the substring. The answer here is to pass in 0, then a colon, and then 5. Recall that the end value is exclusive, meaning that the word hello goes from index 0 to index 4, but we put 5 so that it goes up to, but not including the 5. If you struggled with this coding exercise, I suggest you please rewatch the video in this section on indexing and slicing. This technique is fundamentally important when working in the Python programming language. In the next lecture, we will look at a recap of what we learned in this section of the course. In this lecture, we will look at a recap of what we learned in this section of the course. First, we learned about the different ways that we could specify strings in Python using single quotes, double quotes, or triple quotes. Then we looked at the concepts of indexing and slicing and how they apply to strings. Python has several functions that we can use when working with strings, and we learned about them in the lecture on string functions. After that, we learned about the concept of string concatenation. Finally came a hands-on coding exercise that tested the skills that we learned in this section of the course.